Michigan has seen the mountaintop that so many other teams in college football haven't even come close to seeing. They've made it to the college football in 2 consecutive years, but have fallen short of the ultimate prize. This season, 2023, it's national championship or bust for the Michigan Wolverines. Can Jim Harbaugh lead the Maize and Blue to 3 straight Big Ten titles? And can Michigan win it all at the end of the year?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Folks, I've been watching Big Ten football. I've had my eye on Michigan for the better part of 20 to 25 years. I don't know if I've seen a Michigan team quite like this. They are loaded on just about every position on the football field. The All-22 is a really good 22. It is an excellent 22 for the Michigan Wolverines this season. This is a team that's running it back one more year with one goal in mind: win the national championship. They've been to the college football playoff. Of course, a couple of years back, right, they finally got over the hump against Ohio State. Big celebration for that. Finally won a Big Ten championship. Those were big accomplishments at Michigan. But then, of course, they fell into the buzzsaw that was Georgia. Okay, Georgia, dominant defense, great team. I get it. Okay, the next season, though, you do it again against Ohio State. You do it again in the Big Ten championship game, but you fall to TCU in the semifinals, a game that Michigan fans felt they definitely should have won. They definitely should have been playing for the national championship last season. So there is motivation this season, and there is no question that Michigan fans, the Michigan coaches, the Michigan players, the Michigan alumni, everybody that's ever worn maize and blue expect to get to the national championship this season and definitely want to take home that trophy. A 15-0 season is a possibility for the Michigan Wolverines. And a big reason why it is a possibility is because of what they have in the backfield. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are Heisman Trophy candidates on the road. Together, they are maybe the best backfield I've ever seen. And there has been a lot of great running backs. There's been a lot of great backfields across my viewing history across the Big Ten. But this might be as good as it gets, folks. Corum last season rushed for 1,463 yards and 18 touchdowns. And he got injured in the Illinois game. Didn't play against Ohio State. Didn't play against Purdue. Didn't play against TCU. Imagine what the numbers he would have put up if he did. How about Donovan Edwards? 991 yards, 7 touchdowns. Also had 200 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns as well. Blake Corum was an injury away from a trip to New York City as a Heisman Trophy candidate. Would he have beaten out Caleb Williams? Well, maybe not, but he definitely, maybe for his second, third, he definitely would have been, I think, in that top 3 in the Heisman Trophy voting. This backfield is going to be insanely difficult to stop. I'll talk about a back-to-back Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. I'll talk about the Big Ten's best quarterback and JJ McCarthy as this preview goes on, and I think that actually helps to what, and it definitely helps, of course, in the case of the offensive line, and the better quarterback play helps open up the run game a little bit. We'll talk about that as this preview goes on, but right now about these running backs, you look at Blake Corum, the ability to hit the hole, the ability to take it to the house. You talk about hitting home runs. Donovan Edwards swung a Mark McGuire-sized bat when it came to hitting home runs last season, especially late in the season for Donovan Edwards. Those final 3 games, he was such a big part of, yes, Blake Corum was a great back, no question about it. But when Donovan Edwards came in, he really picked up where Blake Corum left off in this run game. The offensive line makes this such a great tandem. It is very easy to run behind a great offensive line, which is a key part to the cog of the machine, so to speak, to the Michigan Wolverines. So the run game, of course, is going to be the focal point. Jim Harbaugh wants to establish bully ball. He wants to run over you. He wants to establish that running game and then throw off of it. We'll see if that's able to happen. Defense is good luck. Good luck defending this run game, because what you thought it was tough last season, it's going to be even more difficult this season to stop. No one's going to stop the Michigan run game. That's not going to happen. Can you slow it down? Can you do some things to slow it down? Sure, but no one's going to stop the Michigan run game. You're not going to find Michigan in a position where JJ McCarthy is forced to throw it 35, 40 times. That's not going to happen. I just don't think that's going to happen for the Michigan Wolverines this season. Let's try to get both of these guys on the field at the same time. I want to see that in different packages and different situations this season. Maybe you're in shotgun with JJ. You put each guy to either side of him. Maybe you line up one guy in the slot and motion him in. Boy, you put both of these guys on the field at the same time, defenses, they're going to be sweating. They're going to be sweating. They're not going to know what to do. I would love to see that. Really take advantage as much as you can with both of these guys on the field at the same time. Now, that running game is fantastic, but there's another part to this offense that make it what it is, and it's the best quarterback in the Big Ten Conference, and that's JJ McCarthy. Last season, over 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, very efficient with the football, 64% completion rate. His last 3 games of the season last season, you had 767 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Those were his final 3 games of the season. If he would have played at that pace the whole season, he probably would have had over 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. So you got a dynamite run game. Maybe the best in the country. I think it's the best backfield, no question, hands down, in all of college football. And then you throw in a great quarterback, and this offense, it just continues to get better and better and better. It's a balanced offense. His ability to throw the football and the threat that he possesses throwing the football really opens up the run game as well. Losing Ronnie Bell and Luke Schoonmaker are losses in this pass game, no question about it, for the Wolverines, but these are losses that Michigan can deal with. When you take a look at the threats on the perimeter, when you take a look at the threats on the outside, you got to start with Cornelius Johnson, and you got to start with Ronnie Bell. Let's start first with Cornelius Johnson. 499 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. The year before, he actually had better numbers in terms of yards. 627 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns in 2021. He's been one of the main targets on this team for the last few seasons. He can beat you deep. He can run the 10-yard out to precision. He can go slant over the middle. He's got a lot of different talents. He can do a lot of different things at the wide receiver position. He could really break out this year because now he is the number one guy. He is the number one guy. He's not behind a Ronnie Bell or anybody else. I think Cornelius Johnson will definitely be that guy that could really break out, maybe get close to a 1,000-yard season. And you got to talk about Roman Wilson as well, another guy that can beat you deep. A little bit smaller in stature, but what he lacks in size, he makes up for in quickness and the ability to get over the top of the defense. Last season, 376 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns. He had 420 yards and 3 touchdowns all the way back in 2021. So once again, you're looking at a guy that spent a couple of years in this offense with Sherrone Moore. He spent some time in what Michigan wants to do. When you run, one more time, you run it, that's the time when JJ McCarthy is going to beat you over the top with Cornelius Johnson and Roman Williams, the deep ball. You saw that late in the season last year. I think you're going to see it a lot during this season where these guys beat you deep when these linebackers, safeties, defensive backs, when everybody creeps up, that's when you hit the big play, the play action over the top. Now, the big question is, who's going to step in to be that number 3 receiver, that number 4 receiver? Who's going to step up outside of these guys at the wide receiver position? I look at Darius Clemens and Tyler Morris. Those are a couple of guys, 4-star kids, top 150 guys in the class of 2022. Didn't get a ton of time, but when you have Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson, and Roman Wilson, Schoonmaker, and all these other guys in this offense, yeah, you can probably see why they didn't get a ton of catches, but they're definitely going to be expected to step up this season. Now is their time. They've received the recruiting hype. They've received the hype around the program in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Time for those guys to step up and make a difference. And both those guys look pretty solid in the spring game. You want to talk about the spring game? You want to look good in the spring game? You want to talk about that? How about Peyton O'Leary? He tore it up in the spring game. 6 catches, 126 yards. He was my MVP of the spring game. When I look at this guy, you got weapons on the outside, of course, with Cornelius Johnson, with Roman Wilson. I even look at these young kids, Darius Clemens and Tyler Morris. Peyton O'Leary is that Wes Welker type, the Julian Edelman type. When you get to 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 9 and all your eyes are on all these other parts of the offense, that's the guy that's going to run a slant, a deep in, across the middle. He's going to gain 12 yards, keep the chains moving, and it's going to be a back-breaking play for the defense when you're focused on everything else. Peyton O'Leary is going to be that guy that you got to watch out for. I'm excited to see what Peyton O'Leary is going to do. He is going to be a threat, especially on third down for this Michigan passing offense. So the wide receivers look pretty good. A lot of people say that maybe the wide receivers is the weak point. I don't want to use the word weak in this offense. Now, I think they say that because offensive line, quarterback, and running back are generational, it seems like at Michigan. But this wide receiver group is definitely a good wide receiver group at Michigan. Let's talk about tight ends for a minute. Colston Loveland, right, last season, kind of filling in for Luke Schoonmaker. Towards the end of the season, Colston Loveland got a little bit more starts, so he kind of started to transition as the top tight end in this offense. 235 yards and a couple of scores last year for Loveland, 5 starts last season. He can play in the slot from a 2-point stance. He can play with his hand in the dirt as well. Colston Loveland, you can shift him around at different parts in the offense. We saw that in the spring game where they kind of split him out in the slot as well. You could put him at an X and a Z out wide if you really wanted to as well. I think he's a matchup nightmare. He's big for opposing corners. He's quick for opposing safeties and linebackers. Colston Loveland is great. This is going to be a great tight end room and a great tight end combination because you got to take a look at A.J. Barner as well. Transfer from Indiana, 199 yards, 3 touchdowns back in 2022. At 6'6", 250 pounds, he's going to be a candidate for their big target when they get inside the 20. When they get inside the red zone, A.J. Barner is one guy that they're going to look to throw to. Once again, a big target down there in the red zone. You know, you ever go to an event and the coordinator or the face of the event comes up and says, this event wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our sponsors, or if it wasn't for donors, or if it wasn't for person X, Y, and Z. This Michigan offense would not be possible if it weren't for this offensive line. It has been the best offensive line group in the country for the last 2 seasons. You could maybe even go further back than that. But back-to-back Joe Moore awards as the best offensive line in all of college football. And this offensive line is going to be in contention for that award again because they returned 3 starters from that offensive line last season. Let's start with Zach Zinter at right guard, a two-time All Big Ten. First team in 2022, second team in 2021. Started every game the last 2 seasons. He is one of the very best interior offensive line in alignment in all of college football. How about Trevor Keegan at the other guard, at left guard, 2-time All Big Ten. First team in 2022. He had honorable mention in 2021. He started 11 games in each of the last 2 seasons. The interior of the offensive line, at least at guards, is set. We'll talk about center here in just a little bit. At right tackle, of course, you got Carson Barnhart, all Big Ten honorable mention in 2022. He was actually named most improved player at Michigan in 2022. So you bring back a good group and a good core of that offensive line that was named the best in college football last season. Then you go to the transfer portal. Jim Harbaugh and this coaching staff really did a magnificent job in the transfer portal plugging holes throughout this football team. And offensive line is a great example of that. How about Drake Nugent, Ladarius Henderson, and Miles Hinton is going to throw in some depth as well. Drake Nugent, a transfer from Stanford. He's the anticipated starting center. Got big shoes to fill after All-American Olu Atimi moves on. 2-time All-Pac-12, voted team captain. That is key. I'll get to that here in just a minute. How about Ladarius Henderson, another transfer from the Pac-12. From Arizona State, 28 starts. In his Sun Devil career, voted team captain. These are leaders from their respective team. The leaders and best champions of the West, right? This is what they want at Michigan. And a leader at the center position, especially with Drake Nugent, is so important. Leading that group, the captain of the offensive line, so important, right? And Miles Hinton, another transfer from Stanford. So you got 2 offensive line transfers from out on the farm in Palo Alto. 16 starts at right tackle over the last 2 years for Hinton. He's likely going to provide depth at tackle. Okay, he might crack the starting lineup maybe every now and then, injuries, that kind of thing. But this is another offensive line that's going to be in contention to win the Joe Moore Award once again. Folks, this offense is going to be fun to watch. They will pound it down your throat whenever they want to. They're going to be able to go deep and stretch the field most times. Maybe not whenever they want to. Hell, maybe whenever they want to. Who knows? This is a team that can maybe go deep and throw the ball a little bit more. Will it be more balanced this season? We're going to find out. They're going to roll through those first few games, and really we're going to find out where this team really stands. We'll talk about the schedule here later on in this preview. Now, let's move on to the defensive side of the football. Man, a lot of people have talked about Ohio State in terms of having an embarrassment of riches at their skill positions. Michigan has an embarrassment of riches on defense at multiple position groups, right? So this defense could be the best Michigan defense that we've seen in Ann Arbor since 2021, right? That Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, Josh Ross. That was a really good defense, folks. They obviously produced some really good NFL talent as well. When you take a look at the losses, what needs to be replaced, yes, there is some loss. There are some guys that had big roles last year that definitely they need to replace, but overall there's a lot coming back in this Michigan defense. You talk about replacing Mozzie Smith, 26th overall pick by the Cowboys. DJ Turner led the team in pass breakups last season. He was drafted 60th overall by the Browns. Mike Morris led the team in tackles for loss and sacks last season, drafted 151st overall by the Seahawks. And then Eyabi Aoki. Right, this is a highly touted guy coming in. A lot of people were excited about him. He ends up transferring to Charlotte after 6.5 TFLs and 4.5 sacks this season. But they have a lot coming back, and they've done a really good job replacing some of those guys that left. The Wolverines return 6 of their 7 top tacklers from the last season. Yeah, that'll do. Now, when we start talking about Michigan, a lot of these times in this previews, when I focused on the defense, I focused on the linebackers. Sometimes I focused on the defensive line. Michigan, I'm going to start with the secondary because they may have the very best secondary, not only in the Big Ten, but in all of college football. Mike Sanderstill, Will Johnson, Rod Moore, Makari Page are some of the best at their positions according to Pro Football Focus. Let's break it down. Will Johnson, number 3 graded cornerback in the country. Mike Sanderstill, number 5 graded corner in the country. By the way, Will Johnson trails only Kalen King and Cooper DeJean. So B1G all the way, right? At the cornerback position. Going to be a great defensive back here in the Big Ten Conference this season. How about Rod Moore, graded as the number 3 safety in the country. Makari Page, graded as the number 7 safety in the country. They have the most top 10 graded players in corner and safety defensive backs according to Pro Football Focus in all of college football. Let's start with Mike Sanderstill. One of my favorite guys, of course, the converted wide receiver, defensive backs the last few seasons. Man, he's been all over the field. 58 tackles, 6.5 TFLs, 2 sacks, an interception, 7 pass breakups last season, all Big Ten honorable mention. He's one of my favorite guys. Okay, he's such a good player back there. He can do it all. He's really made a seamless transition to the defensive side of the football. How about Will Johnson? 3 interceptions, second on the team in T's last season, 3 pass breakups as a freshman. A freshman All-American. You forgot that at certain times of the season last year, didn't you? Yeah, he's really good for a freshman, and he's going to be one of the best corners in all of college football here this season. How about Rod Moore at safety? 4 interceptions last season, led the team in that category. 3rd on the team in tackles of 71, can step up and play the run. All Big Ten honorable mention for Rod Moore. Makari Page, 41 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and interception. All Big Ten honorable mention. Out of those 4 guys, 3 of them were all Big Ten. The only one that wasn't all Big Ten, just a freshman All-American in Will Johnson. Yeah, he's probably going to be all Big Ten this season. And then they picked up transfer Josh Wallace from UMass. 2 interceptions, 7 pass breakups this season. That was a big target in the transfer portal for Michigan, and they got it done. Here's a fun fact. Don Brown was the head coach last season in his first year at UMass, so there's a Michigan connection there as well. Young guys Jaden McBurrows and Amarian Walker could see time as well. They saw some good time in the spring game. Let's move on to the linebackers, and the depth at the linebacker position it's freaking stupid. It's stupid. The depth on this team is stupid at Michigan. Let's start with Junior Colson, led Michigan in tackles with 101 last year, also 6 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. Second team, all Big Ten. This could be a guy in the running for Defensive Player of the Year type of thing in the Big Ten Conference this season. How about Michael Barrett, second on the team in tackles with 72, 5 TFLs, 3.5 sacks, 2 interceptions. Third team, all Big Ten. Let's keep on going down the list. How about the edge? I'm really excited about the edge rushers this season at Michigan. Jalen Harrell, 7.5 tackles for loss, second on the team last season, 3rd on the team in sacks. with 3.5. He's expected to be one of the top edge rushers at Michigan, maybe in the conference. Honorable mention All Big Ten last season. 6'4", 246. His size and athleticism is a very difficult matchup for tackles within the Big Ten and the teams that they're going to play this season. Really excited to see what Jalen Harrell can do. Of course, Mike Morris was that guy that really got into the backfield, really provided pressure last season. Really excited to see what some of these other edge rushers can do to kind of fill those holes a little bit. Going to the transfer portal, once again, huge. Let's start first with Josiah Stewart. This is a guy that could fill in as maybe another edge rusher on this team. Jalen Harrell on one side, Josiah Stewart on the other. A transfer from Coastal Carolina holds the CCU record for sacks in a season. He had 12.5 in 2021. A freshman All-American in 2021. Two-time All-Sun Belt. You pair him with Harrell, good luck. Good luck. You're not going to be able to slide your protection over to one side to prevent one of the edge rushers because you got to deal with the other on the other side of that line as well. Here's a big transfer. Now, he might not see a ton of time this year, but Ernest Hausman from Nebraska, one of the top freshman defenders of the Big Ten last season, especially as the season went on, and Ernest Hausman got more snaps for the Huskers. Man, that was a big steal, right? He was a local kid from Nebraska, and then for him now to come over to Michigan, boy, that is huge. That is big time for the Wolverines. 54 tackles, 2 for loss last season. He's going to be a future star, I think, in Michigan. I mentioned what they already have at linebacker this season. He's going to provide depth this season. He's still going to see snaps. There's no question about that. But this guy, he is the future on defense for Michigan. I think there's no question about that. He's going to see a lot of time this season, even in a depth role. Like the wide receivers on offense, the defensive line could be getting overlooked just because of how good the rest of those units are. But it shouldn't be. There's good players on this defensive line. Let's start with Chris Jenkins, 54 tackles, 3.5 for loss, 2 sacks last season. All Big Ten honorable mention, started all 14 a year ago. How about Mason Graham as well? 27 tackles, 2 of them for loss. He shared Michigan Defensive Freshman of the Year honor, so he's looking to kind of step up to fill that role on the defensive line as well. He was a freshman All-American, according to Pro Football Focus. Braden McGregor as well at edge. You look at Braden McGregor, Jalen Harrell, who will probably play more of a linebacker role, and then Josiah Stewart. There's going to be some pressure coming off the edge. Offensive lines in the Big Ten are going to have to seriously game plan. They're going to have to stay up all night to try to game plan, to try to stop these guys. McGregor, 17 tackles, 5 for loss, 2.5 sacks. You look at the rotation. McGregor, 6'6", 261. He provides a little bit more size. I think a little bit something different than the speed and athleticism of a guy 6'2", 230 of a Josiah Stewart coming off the edge as well. Folks, this defense could be the best defense that they've had since 2021. Will it be the best defense of the Jim Harbaugh era? They had a good defenses, even before 2021 as well. I am so excited to see what this defense can do. It's going to be very difficult to throw the football on Michigan. You look at their secondary and what they can do in coverage. You look at their pass rush. It's going to be extremely difficult. This Michigan defense, this Michigan offense, they are both freaking loaded. So pumped to see what Michigan can do this season. Can this team go 12-0 in the regular season? That's the path to a Big Ten title. That's the path to a spot in the college football playoff. That's the path to a possible national championship. Let's run it up. Run it up to start the season. One of the weaker Power 5 non-conference schedules there with East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green, and then Rutgers, right? That month of September starting off pretty friendly in the friendly confines of the Big House at Michigan Stadium. But when I look at this schedule, Michigan State is an interesting game as well. Now, Michigan's a lot better on paper than the Spartans, but it's a rivalry game. You got to think Michigan going to have a little bit of extra motivation considering what happened at the end of the game at their house last season. It would not surprise me to see the Wolverines win by 20, win by 30 against Michigan State. But watch out for that game. That's going to have a little bit more juice underneath it this season, especially if Michigan State is a little bit better to start this season than they started last season. How about those last 3 games of the season? Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State, saving the best for last. That Maryland game is tricky, right smack dab in between a game at Happy Valley and home against the hated Buckeyes of Ohio State. That's a tricky game in between there. Ohio State played Maryland late in the season last year, and that one was a little bit tricky as well for the Buckeyes. So watch out for that. Going on the road to Penn State is going to be one of the more anticipated matchups of the season, outside, of course, of that Michigan-Ohio State game. Little sneak peek for my prediction show down the stretch. I think Michigan's going to make it 3 in a row against the Buckeyes. I feel very strongly about that. I feel very strongly about this Michigan team as a whole, folks. This is as good as a Big Ten team top to bottom as I've seen in a very long time. This is a Michigan team that has their eyes on one prize, the national championship. Can they win it? Can they go undefeated, 15-0? Can they run the table? Want to hear your thoughts on Michigan football. It's a great time to be a fan of the Maize and Blue.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.